everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another episode of 100 Days of DevOps. So, in the last couple of days, I think in the last about 10 days, we covered infrastructure as code, where we looked at what infrastructure as code helps us to achieve, and we looked at different tools that can help us implement infrastructure as code, such as Terraform, Pulumi, and all of the rest. And then we deep dived into Terraform, what Terraform is. We worked on Terraform. We talked about Terraform state files, Terraform backend, and we rounded that up with a very nice project, which is an Azure landing zone. We used Terraform to provision a landing zone on Microsoft Azure. So just like I said, the code is already on my GitHub repository. So by the time you're seeing that video as well as this video, the code will already be on my GitHub. So you can check it, you can fork the repository, and then you can make your own project out of that. Feel free to edit it as you deem fit. So that was where we ended things, and I thought, okay, that was going to be like the end of phase 5, which is the infrastructure as code. But it got me thinking, this phase will not be complete if we don't talk about um, another concept. So what we did was infrastructure as code. Basically, we set up the infrastructure and all of that. But now, when your infrastructure has been set up and your resources have been deployed, how do you configure those? How do you automate configuration of those resources? And I that brought me, or that made me realize the need to cover something called Ansible. So in the next couple of days, maybe 3 or 4 days, or maybe 5 days, depending on how long it takes, we're going to cover what we call Ansible. We're going to introduce us to Ansible. So if you're hearing Ansible for the first time, basically primarily Ansible is a configuration management tool. What it does is it helps you to configure your resources in a way that you want them to be. So the first thing we want to do is we want to ask, why do we need to understand Ansible? Like I always say, the first step to understanding a tool or a concept is to understand why. When you understand the why of that tool or of that concept, it helps you to further be able to use that tool for to your advantage, right? So now, why Ansible? So I'm going to paint a picture for you. I always like doing this, paint a scenario for you so that you understand. I don't just want to give definitions and all of that. So why Ansible? Let me get this. So let's imagine now you have a virtual machine. You've provisioned the virtual machine on Microsoft Azure, and you want to install, let's say you want to install Nginx. You want to install Java, Java JDK, and a bunch of other things. You want to update the OS and all of that. So you can easily just go to your, what do you call it? You can easily just go to your virtual machine, run the command to install Nginx, run the command to install Java, and you're fine, right? You're fine. But now let's take it a little bit further. So one thing you don't want to do is, as a DevOps engineer, one of the goals is to automate repetitive tasks. So let's say you have not just one server, you have like 3 servers. Now let's say you have 3 servers and you are to install Nginx, Java JDK, and all the other stuffs on this server. And you have to, like, imagine you have to manually log into the first server and then you install it. After that, you manually log into the second server, and then you manually log into the third server to install it. Yes, that might be okay, but you might want to, add a little bit of automation. So as a DevOps engineer, okay, fine. You said, okay, let's have a shell script. Let's have a shell script. So you have a shell script, and you You name it installation.sh. Installation.sh, once you just have it, you have that shell script on the 3 virtual machines, right? You run it. The command to run a shell script is just this, and then you have it installed, right? So you run this command, you run this, you do your chmod a plus x, you run this command on the first virtual machine, second virtual machine, the third virtual machine. Now, it works fine, right? Okay. Let's imagine that, let's just assume that this virtual machine is an Ubuntu virtual machine, a Linux virtual machine, Ubuntu, and okay, let's say there's a fourth virtual machine, right? These first 3 virtual machines are Linux. Hold on. They are all these first 3 virtual machines are Linux. Okay. And apparently the fourth virtual machine happens to be a Windows virtual machine. So now you've already written this shell script, and this shell script is meant for Linux virtual machine. The moment you run this shell script on this Windows virtual machine, it will fail. It will fail because the shell script was written for Linux. I hope I'm trying to paint a picture there, so just work with me. So now it will fail. Why? Because Linux and Windows, they're not the same. The operating system are not the same. So obviously, what will work on Linux will not work on Windows. Now, let's even abstract this Windows. Let's take out this Windows. Let's now say this Linux now. Linux doesn't have just one flavor. So you have Ubuntu, Linux, you have let's say you have CentOS, let's say you have, and this you have Alpine. So now you have the same Linux virtual machine, right? But now you have different flavors. And different flavors of Linux have different ways or different commands used to install packages on them. For Ubuntu, you have the apt. For CentOS, you have the DNF or YOM, and for Alpine, you have the APK. So now, despite having the same Linux, like you having, they're all Linux virtual machine, but now they have different distros and different ways of installing. So now when you look at it now, it makes this shell script really a bit difficult for us to actually install on this virtual machine. So now this is where Ansible comes into play. This is where Ansible comes into play. And now, before I even talk about Ansible, this is just 4 virtual machines. Imagine in a production environment, you will not have 4 virtual machines. Definitely, you will not have 4 virtual machines. You have hundreds of virtual machines. Say you have 200 virtual machines. Say you have 300 virtual machines. You now have to start running this shell script in all the virtual machines. Definitely not. And this is where Ansible comes into play. Ansible, the way Ansible is designed, Ansible helps you just have one single virtual machine, and then you use that virtual machine to install things on other virtual machines. It's just like this virtual machine is called is this will be your control node. This will be your control node, and this will be all these virtual machines will be your target node. So you have a control node where you define what you want to install, you define what you want to set up, and then you just target your target nodes. If it's a Linux virtual machine, you already have a definition for it. If it's the Windows virtual machine, you already have, like, you've already defined it in and you can even have a single Ansible playbook to have all of that installed. So that is basically the concept of Ansible, where you can from one maybe from a control node. The control node can even be your personal PC, right? You can use your personal PC and then you deploy things to virtual machines on Microsoft Azure. All you need to do is just add them into an inventory file. Once you add them into the inventory file, Ansible reads that inventory file and then applies those configurations on those virtual machines that are in inventory file. So I hope I've been able to give like a broad overview of what Ansible has come to actually do. Now, before Ansible, were there other tools? Obviously, there were other tools. We had tools like we had tools like Puppet, we had tools like Chef, and others before Ansible came. So why go for Ansible instead of these other tools? For one which is I feel like it's the most valid or most important reason why Ansible shines above all these tools is that for you to use Puppet or for you to use Chef, the way it is done is that you would have like your control node talk to Puppet or talk to Chef, and then you have all this Puppet installed in all your target nodes, right? You have Puppet installed in all your target nodes. So imagine you have like 200 servers. You have to now start installing Puppet or installing Chef on all 200 servers, which it doesn't really sound like, or it doesn't really meet the goal of automation. However, Ansible is agentless. What I mean by agentless is that all you need to do is install Ansible on your control node. That is all you need to do. You don't have to install Ansible on any of your target. In fact, your target VM don't even need to have Ansible. They just need to have Python. As long as they have Python installed in them, all you need to do is install Ansible, because underneath the hood, Ansible is actually like Ansible works with Python, right? It works with Python underneath the hood, right? So all you need to do is just have Python installed in your target node, and you install Ansible only on your control node, and you're good to go. Secondly, Puppet and Chef, they have their own language. I think you have to start learning Ruby, you have to start learning Groovy and all of that. However, in Ansible, all you need to do is you just need to know YAML. Ansible is written in YAML, and if you've been following my videos up till now, there's almost nothing we have not done without YAML. We've used YAML in different stages, in different phases of this series. So by now, I believe that you should be very, very familiar with YAML. And that's why most times they always say, as a DevOps engineer, one of the things you're supposed to really be good at is YAML. You can be forgiven if you don't know how to write Python. You can be forgiven if you don't know how to write Golang. But YAML is something that you just have to know, because YAML is like the DevOps language. YAML is like the DevOps language. There is almost no tool that doesn't like use YAML, right? And when I was taking the YAML part of this series, I mentioned different parts of DevOps. I mean, I can say maybe about 70%, 70 or 60% of DevOps too, they are written in YAML. So that is why it is very, very important and very crucial for you to actually know YAML and be good with YAML. So Ansible is written in YAML, even though underneath the hood it works with Python. So now with YAML, it's easy to actually write. To write YAML is something that is very, very easy. Just define what you want, and then Ansible does it for you. So now, first off, I said Ansible is agentless, whereby you don't have to install Ansible on your target nodes. You only need to install Ansible on your control node. Secondly, Ansible is written in YAML, which is a universal DevOps language. And as a DevOps engineer, you should be comfortable with writing YAML files or YAML scripts by now. And That's like the two biggest reasons why you would want to choose Ansible ahead of these other tools. So, and you might want to ask, okay, is Ansible only made for configuration management? The answer is no. While Ansible started as a configuration management tool, Ansible has been developed to do other things, such as first, predominantly is a configuration management tool, configuration management. But beyond that, Ansible has grown to do other things. Ansible can also be used for provisioning. Yes, provisioning. That means you can use Ansible to provision your virtual machines on Azure. You can use Ansible to provision virtual machines on on-prem and all of that. You might be saying, "Oh, that sounds familiar." Yes, Terraform does the same thing, and we'll still come back to visit that comparison between Terraform and Ansible. So, also, Ansible has now been used. Ansible can now be used to do your deployment. When it comes to CI/CD, you can now use Ansible. People have now used Ansible for deploying your applications to your virtual machines and all of that. And you might say, "Oh, wow, sounds familiar." Yes, we've talked about CI/CD, we've talked about Jenkins, we've talked about GitHub Actions, and even in the next phase, we'll still talk about Argo CD. So yes, and then finally, Ansible can now be used as a network automation tool. What I mean by network automation, if you are a network engineer, you work with Cisco, you work with F5, you work with all of that, you can now use Ansible to automate something like creating a VLAN. You can automate the creation of something like a VLAN and all of the rest. So you can see that Ansible is something that you can use for a whole lot of things, not just for configuration management. But however, predominantly Ansible is a configuration management tool. Now, I talked about provisioning. So you might be thinking, is there a case where you use Terraform instead of Ansible or you use Ansible instead of Terraform? If you're going to ask me between using Terraform and Ansible for provisioning, I would advise that you stick with Terraform, because when you have a tool that has been specifically designed to do one particular thing, it's better you go with it instead of a tool that can be used to do so many things. Why? Because if there's a new thing, if there's a new update, it is likely that Terraform would quickly adopt that new update when it comes to provisioning of resources. It's likely that Terraform will adopt that new update before Ansible will do that, because Ansible does so many things. But at the core of everything, Ansible is a configuration management tool. So if you want to go into provisioning, you can use Terraform. However, that is not to say Ansible and Terraform cannot work hand in hand. I think maybe during the course of this video, we might see how to work with Ansible and Terraform, where we use Terraform to provision a resource and then we use Ansible to configure it. So Ansible and Terraform can be used to work hand in hand. Now, in terms of deployment, Ansible and Jenkins can work hand in hand. So Ansible is not, let me say, it has not really come to replace those tools. Ansible has been made in a way where you can even work with those tools that have been dedicated to do all those things. So that's how rich Ansible can be. So yeah, I believe I've been able to do like a brief introduction. Like I always say it, whenever we are covering a new tool, the first video is usually a video to understand what that tool has come to do, understand how it works, understand the comparison with other tools, and then we are going to demonstrate how to install Ansible. So now that we understand what Ansible is, now that we understand the purpose of Ansible, now that we understand what Ansible has come to achieve, the last thing we are going to do before we end this video is how to install Ansible. So just like every other great tool, Ansible has a great documentation page also. And like I always say, the best way to install something is to install it from documentation page itself. So I have my VS Code here, and I'm just going to go to the terminal And so I'll wait for this to load up. So while we're waiting for that to load up, we can just come to your browser and type install Ansible. So there's a great Ansible page which is called docs.ansible.com. So you click on this, so it takes you to the Ansible documentation page. And when you come here, so the first thing I want to show us is the control node requirement. So from here, they said for your control node, the machine that runs on Ansible, you can install on any Unix-like machine with a Python install. Basically, you can use Red Hat, Debian, Ubuntu, any Linux machine can be used as a control node. However, if you want to use a Windows, let's say, for example, now my laptop is a Windows operating system. If you want to use Windows, you have to use WSL, Windows subsidiary for Linux. And I think the very first or second video of this 100 days of dev, I think the day two, I talked about we installed after we installed the hypervisor and all of that. I also showed us how to install WSL. So the only way for you to use your Windows PC as a control node is for you to have this WSL installed. So I have WSL installed on my PC. So I can go here, you can see it here, Ubuntu WSL. So when I click on it, so it will change from the first, what I was using before, the default that it will bring you is PowerShell, right? So I will just change from PowerShell to WSL. So now that we have that, the first thing we have to do is, so let's scroll down. Okay, so let's, so that, okay, I think there are different ways of installing Ansible. So you can install and upgrade Ansible with PIPX. I'm not going to do that. Want to install Ansible with pip. Like I said, Ansible works with Python under the hood, right? So the first thing you do is you have to verify if pip is already installed. So you click on it. So copy and we'll paste. So this will tell us if pip is already installed on. Okay, so we have, okay, I have pip already installed. I have my Python already installed. And okay, so you should see this. So which is the response that I got. I got pip 24 from this and Python 3.12, which is even more updated than what I have here. So if you don't have this, if you don't see this outcome when you run pip3m install, then you can go ahead and you run this. I think, okay, this install blah blah. So you have to install Python and install pip and all of that. But now that we have that, we'll go to the next stage. So we'll run pip3 install Ansible. So I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste this here. I think I need to remove this second one. Okay, so let's, oh, okay. I need to be in a virtual environment, blah, 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 blah. So I've even forgotten, I'm not even supposed to. Okay, let me see. Environment is blah, 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 blah. To install Python, this try apt install x blah, 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 blah. If you wish to install environment, okay, so I need to put this in a virtual environment. Okay. I think what's the command? I think I've forgotten the command, so I'm just going to search for it. Trying to get the command. Okay. Let's run this command. I think it should be Python 3, but let's try it. Okay, so let's see. Python cannot be found, so it is Python 3. Python 3. Just give it a sec. So I'll get into the virtual environment and then we can run our pip install or our pip3 install. Okay, so the command ran successfully, and one thing I forgot to have checked. I forgot that I already had Ansible installed. So I should have just done Ansible hyphen version. You understand? So, but like I said, we've already installed this, and you can just follow the process when you run your when you. So it's just the way it is from the documentation. You do your three install Ansible, and once that is done, you can come down here and use Ansible hyphen version to check if that has been installed. So once you get an output like this, so that means Ansible has been installed. So the last thing I want us to do for today is whenever we want to, you know, work with any tool and everything, we always try to use an IDE. The reason why we are using an IDE is because IDE has plugins that helps make things easier or that helps make life easier for us as DevOps engineers or as developers and all of that. So we're also going to install the IDE to help us write our Ansible playbooks. And we'll come to your extension. The first you want to install, I know we must have installed it before, which is a YAML extension. I know we must have installed it when we were working with YAML. So if I click on this, so you can see that it's already installed. So except if I want to uninstall it. So if you don't have this already installed, so you would see the button to install instead. So you have that installed. You want to make sure that you're picking the YAML extension from Red Hat, which is verified. You can see it there. Now, once that is done, the next thing you want to do is to search for Ansible. So you also want to pick the one from Red Hat. Ansible is also owned by Red Hat. So you click on it and then you install Ansible. So once that is installed, then we are ready to start working on Ansible. So I'm going to see you on the next video where we'll start doing things with Ansible and then we'll start seeing in real time, in real life, how Ansible works. So that will be all from me from now. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. I hope you've also gained one or two things from today's video. Please do well to keep liking the videos, keep sharing it with your friends, with your colleagues, with your family, and most importantly, you can turn on your notification bell. That's after subscribing to my channel. So when I post new videos, you get them as soon as they are uploaded. So I'll see you on the next video. Enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers.